Do you have multiple data sources with the same data that you need to combine into a single table in Power Query? Well, you're in luck. Today we're talking about appending data in Power Query. Welcome back to our video series on Power BI Basics, where we are teaching you how to use Power BI from the ground up. If you're interested in learning Power BI, please take a second to hit the subscribe button. I'm releasing short, easy to follow tutorials daily that will teach you how to use Power BI. So, before we talk about the append function in Power Query, let's first talk about a scenario that you might want to use it. Let's say your HR department changed systems and didn't move the data of the terminated employees into the new system. So now your historical data is in one system and your current employee data is in another, and you need a single blended table for your report with both historical and current data. Well, in that scenario, you could use the append function. First, let's take a look at this visual that shows how the append function works. So, if you have table number 1 over here in the green, and then table number 2 over here in the blue, the append function essentially stacks the two. Now, you might notice that in both of these two tables, you have 3 columns, and then in the appended table, you have 4 columns. That's because the append function in Power Query matches by column names. So, for example, here we have A and A, so those 2 columns get stacked. B and B, so those 2 columns are stacked. But then over here in the first table, we have table C, and then in the second table, we have table D. And so what you can see here is that Power Query maintains column C, but then puts in two null values for the rows from the second table, and then it maintains column D, but puts in 3 null values for the tables over here. So, let's jump into Power BI, and let's start appending data. So here in Power BI, I have 3 pieces of sales data, one from each region. So I've got a Northwest region, a West region, and a Northeast region. Now, I only want one sales data query in Power BI. So, what I can do is I can append it. And I can go over here by clicking Append Queries. And if I click this little drop down, I have an option to either append the queries into a single query or to append the queries as a new query. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click Append Queries as New. Now, this is going to give me a pop-up. Right now, we're just going to start by appending 2 tables. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to append Sales Data Northeast, and then I'm going to append Sales Data West. I'm going to click OK. Now, since both my data sources have 2 columns, you can see that they just stacked on top of each other. And I only have one applied step right here, which is this single source function. And if we look at what that source function is, it's table combine and then the 2 table names. And then it's created a new query over here called append 1. Now, what if I want to combine all 3 of these queries? Well, let's try that. So I'm going to go back up here, and I'm going to go Append Queries. Then I'm going to go Append Queries as New. And I'm going to click here. I'm going to click 3 or more tables. Well, right here, you can now see that I can move these tables over. So I can move over Northwest, I can move over West, and I can move over Northeast. And then I can also change their order, so like if I wanted to stack them in different order. But right now I don't. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click OK. What you'll now see is that this now created append 2, and it still only has one applied step with source, but now in my table combine, I now have 3 different queries. So that's a pretty simple append scenario. But what if my tables have different columns? So for example, I'm going to go into my Northwest column in here, and I'm going to add a column, and I'm going to go Custom Column, and I'm going to make my custom column be called region, or I'm going to make the column's name be called region, and I'm going to make the region be Northwest over here, and then I'm going to make this be called region here, and then I'm going to click OK. So if you look, I now have a region column in this one. Then I'm going to go over into my West column over here, and I'm going to create a new custom column, but in here I'm going to introduce a typo. So I'm going to make this new column be called region name, or underscore name here. I'm going to title this one West. So if you see here, I now have a custom column that now says West. Now I'm going to try to append these two. So I'm going to go back over here to Home, and then once again I'm going to go Append Queries is new. And then I'm going to go through, and I've got my West data up top and my Northwest data over here, and I'm going to click OK. And what you'll see that in my append, I now have two different columns here. I now have a region name and a region. So if you're going to be appending, make sure they share the same column name if you want them to be in the same column. Now, you might notice that my region name from the West is coming before my region from the Northwest. That's because of the order I put them in the append. So one more time, I'm going to go and click the Append Queries button, then Append Queries as new, and then only this time I'm going to put the sales data Northwest up top, and then I'm going to put the sales data West down below. I'm going to click OK. So now here you can see I now have region ahead of region name. All right, well, that's been a brief overview on Append. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions, and if you haven't already, please subscribe. We're releasing one tutorial every single day that'll slowly teach you how to use Power BI, Power Query, and a ton of other data tools. And I'd be happy to have you along for the journey.